The reason black boys need books. Because books and chances may be hidden from you, while dirty looks, disdain, pity, or bullets may be given to you with careless abandon, and you will only be able to give some of those back. Because where else are you going to learn about black superheroes, from John Johnson to John Stewart, from Cinque to Static, from Sojourner to Storm, from Du Bois to Darwin, from the Black Panthers to the Black Panther? Because your next book could be a textbook that says nothing about you, that denies your inheritance to the mixing pot of gold forged by bronze hands, and you may never know why you may never know who you truly are. Imagine being made to believe that you never counted simply by not being counted, because you never did the math, so you could never understand why you live life in pieces instead of peace, because fractions confuse you. Because if anyone has ever needed a secret identity, the ability to be both seen and unseen at the same time, it is you. You who could never disappear behind glasses. You who could never disappear in classes. Because your origin story cannot be covered up. They will always know from where you came and from where you were taken, and that they have a better chance of returning a half-eaten steak to the kitchen than returning you to the place from which you were taken. So, rather than trying to push you out, many will be content with pushing you down so deep that you come face to face with the fossils of your forgotten family. Because, at some point, everyone needs a home away from home, even when they have nowhere to go but home. Because you will be dealt diatribes like spades, and you will swallow them like false bravado, men so often hollow-tipped that heads resound when struck like bells or bottles, warriors named and feared before found and spoken to. Because you so seldom see yourself reflected in a positive light, as if all your mirrors are dust-covered, cracked, or tucked away in dark corners. Which is not so. You are etched so deeply in the pages of history that its spine would collapse without you. Because you need to see that you are not defined by or confined to the images of you that you see. Because those that don't like you don't want to be like you because they like you. They don't see why you don't see you like they do. They've never seen you as more than what they see. And sometimes you may not. So you need to be readers. You need these portals to prosperity. And we need to write them. Peace, everybody. What's up? And welcome to Camp Lead On Excursion 3. My name is Tony Jackson. I'll be your camp counselor or guide for this section. I've been an elementary school teacher for about 15 years now in Hackensack, New Jersey. And I also love to create. I love to write. I write poems just like the one that I just read for you. And I am passionate about this work. I'm also learning and growing every day. And I believe you are too. I think that's why you're here with me, right? To learn and to grow together, with the understanding that what I'm leading a conversation about is not something that I've mastered. It's something that I'm committed to, something that I'm studying, and something that I'm practicing constantly in order to implement it in my practice in the classroom and in my life in general. So I hope that my reflections on this help you to do the same in some way. Okay, now the piece that I read in the beginning is called "The Reason Black Boys Need Books." And I wrote that after years in the classroom witnessing a couple of things. One, the power that we hold as educators and the roles that we play in our students' lives as they form their identities. And two, the importance of turning that power over to them so that we don't dictate how they identify themselves, but instead we give them whatever help we can so that they can see that there's value in the identities that they hold. Today we're talking about equity and literacy at all levels. I'm talking classroom, school, and district level. Now we need to know our students to help them, and we need to allow them to know and see themselves and the world through more than just our lens. Think about the power that comes from being able to define yourself, to define your story. The power that comes from being seen for who you choose to be. If we're practicing equity, we're letting go of some of the control that has been a hallmark of schooling for a very, very long time. Now, Kimberly Crenshaw has an amazing quote. She says that treating different things the same can generate as much inequality as treating the same things differently. And we need to acknowledge that historically, when we're dealing with students from marginalized and oppressed groups, we're working within an oppressive system to counter oppression and the effects of it. So no, we can't just teach the same way that we've been taught, or even the same way that we've always taught, even if we feel like it's worked for us in the past. Now, the session is called Read the Room because it's something that we all need to do, and also because it references literacy. Now, consider that literacy has two meanings. It refers to the ability to read and write, and it also refers to competence or knowledge in a specific area. And it's important to recognize that students may be literate in different ways. We have to do the work of knowing our students well enough to find those ways. And we can't just value the literacy that we're familiar with or that we've been expected to hold in the highest regard or esteem. Read the room. Recognize the power of the messages that are being delivered in your classroom, in your school, in your district. Read the room. Know your audience and be a learner first. Consider a student that struggles writing a 5-paragraph essay, but is literate enough that they're able to write an entire rap verse that tells about their own experience or their life. Consider the aspects of literacy that are at work there. They're using literary devices. Rhyme, meter, simile, metaphor, alliteration. Consider the performative aspect. What are they showing you in terms of voice, clarity, intonation? And just because they're not delivering in the format that you chose, it doesn't mean that there is not value in what they were able to create and express. Understand that diversity is not enough. When we talk about this, a lot of people often jump right to diversity as the solution. And it's undoubtedly essential, but it is not enough. So growing up, I was blessed with a family that helped me to appreciate and to value education, creativity, culture, my own and those of others. I saw the village around me reflect that as well. I was listening to KRS-One, I was reading Langston Hughes, Milestone Comics, I was reading Seize the Time by Bobby Seale, Soul on Ice by Eldridge Cleaver. I learned about African kingdoms and black heroes, and I saw myself reflected in the literature around me. I saw myself reflected in the world around me, my culture, my people, my history, my beliefs. At school, I was reading The Crucible, The Scarlet Letter, The Things They Carried, A Separate Peace, Hamlet. Now, it's not to say that any of those aren't fine, important pieces of literature, but I question if my teachers or my school ever considered where I was supposed to find myself within those texts. As a teacher, it's something that I have to work to be aware of myself. Just because a book has diverse characters doesn't mean that the perspective or the message reflects those of the group that character is a part of. It's often that we read words and ideas of white authors that are placed in the mouths of black characters. Own voice text refers to texts that are written about a character from a marginalized group by an author from that group. When we talk about diversifying our libraries, that's what we need to look for. We have to make sure that we're not just trying to do surface level work there so that it looks good. It's more likely that non-white students will be reading books with white characters or animal main characters almost 80% of the time. Try to think right now of a topic in your library, in your classroom, that is problematic with regard to what we're talking about right now. Can you think of one? Two? A whole bunch? Can you think of textbooks? Are you thinking of novels? Are you thinking of nonfiction and fiction books? Because these issues exist in all of them across all genres. They are there. We need to make sure that we're opening our eyes so that even if we have books that are our favorites, we're viewing them with a critical lens. My dad used to always remind us of 3 levels in life: survival, success, and significance. At the survival level, we're just getting by. We have the basics that we need to function and not much else. At the success level, we've gained or achieved enough that we've been able to reach some goals that we've set for ourselves. Now, significance means that we're not only achieving our own goals, but we're doing things that are meaningful in the lives of others. Now, let's move these 3 into the realm of education. Some students are stuck at the survival level. They're just trying to keep their heads above water. Some will reach success and even significance, but often those are very narrowly defined and they speak only to their grades or to how well they follow the rules. Reading the room, knowing our students and our communities, that can help us to expand our view and widen our perspective on what survival, success, and significance actually look like. When you only see yourself in survival situations, it's harder to envision success. When you seldom see folks that look like you succeeding in any arena, it's harder to fathom significance. Now, as teachers, we have to look at ensuring our students' survival as a given. And in order to bring them from survival to success to significance, we have to know them. We have to read the room. A part of our own literacy has to be equity literacy. How do we define success and significance through an inclusive lens? We have to decenter ourselves and we do the work of reaching our students. And I say reaching because we do have to stretch ourselves in our understanding. They say when you know better, you do better, right? And when you reach better, you teach better. So how are you reaching your students? How are you learning who they are? Are you having conversations? Are you doing surveys? Whatever way you decide, make sure that this is always a major part of your practice. And understand that knowing our students means knowing their community, knowing their background, etc. So here are a few places that we can make sure we are putting in the work. We can start with ourselves. But we don't stop there. We find and we combat biases wherever they are, be it us, our friends, our family, and I think it goes without saying, but also in our schools. And we have to say it loud so that people understand that you are active in these beliefs. We examine and we co-create norms at the classroom, school, and district level that address and counteract oppressive systems and practices that we've been a part of. They also have to affirm all the stakeholders. So before you go off and give your students the rules about homework, you have to affirm that you value their lives outside of school and their time at home with their family and caregivers. Once you've established that, then the rules should depend on the norms. Now, one exercise to that end is auditing your classroom and your home library, as well as auditing your pedagogical beliefs and practices. We all know that just because it's the way that something has been done does not mean that it's the way that it should be done. Do the work of learning what you don't know and the work of unlearning what you need to unlearn. Engage in conversations outside of your circle. If you're only viewing things from one perspective, you can't see where your students are coming from, and you probably won't be able to show them where they're capable of going. Okay, so I've been talking a lot, which makes sense because I wouldn't be able to hear you anyway. You might be talking right now, I don't know, but still, I want to try something with you. Take a minute. I want you to think, and then I want you to write down what survival, success, and significance each look like in your classroom, or if you're an administrator, in your school. And you can do this from the perspective of a teacher for students, but you can also do this from the perspective of a teacher or an administrator for teachers. What does it look like for your teachers to be just surviving, to be successful, and to be at that level of significance? Jot those things down. Think about what the fundamental needs are that have to be in place for your students or your teachers to feel seen and supported, not just academically, but emotionally and mentally. And please, please, please do not just make this about academics. Don't just make it about grading or assessing. You're missing the point. This has to be about the whole person because we're looking at them as whole people, not just numbers. Okay, you got them? Now I want you to hold on to those, and when you start establishing your norms, use those as a reminder of what you're looking to create and accomplish with your students and your teachers. If you've only got enough to ensure survival, it's not enough. Oh, and please, please do not take this exercise and think that your ideas are going to be the right ones. You have to consider that there are other stakeholders involved in this. So if you are coming up with what survival success and significance looks like and not taking into consideration or not looking for and seeking out what the students or your staff have to say and what they think, then we're getting it wrong. Something else to keep in mind. Sometimes what happens in the classroom stays in the classroom. That's not necessarily a positive thing. If the principles and values in your room aren't reflected and respected throughout the school, you will lose. It doesn't mean that you won't win, but you'll lose time, you'll lose ground, you'll lose support, and more. You may have wins, but you're going to be racking up those losses. If it's happening in certain classrooms, but it's not happening school-wide, then it's not school culture. In the same way, designating a safe space just points out that other spaces are not safe, right? If student safety is school culture, then it should be safe everywhere. Districts, please put building before branding. Some folks take a slogan or an idea and slap it on the district and then try to fit everything into that idea instead of building organically through collaboration and relationships and genuinely living the core principles that any slogan would represent. Now, I'm reminding you, I am working on all of this too. We have to be constantly aware because erasure can be blatant and it can also be subtle. In our social studies textbook, current social studies textbook, the first image or mention of Black people is a paragraph about Africans being enslaved. But I read the room, and I made sure that before we touched on that, we humanized Africans and studied African kingdoms, Mali, Songhai. We discussed Timbuktu, Mansa Musa, before we discussed the conquering Europeans. We discussed the Maya and the Inca and the Aztecs. We celebrated the people and the contributions of those cultures. When I was in college, I came back to my high school to do a poetry performance and workshop for my students. My old English teacher saw me with my locks wrapped in a bandana and came over to me with a frightful look and said, "Oh my goodness, Tony, if I saw you on the street, I would run the other way." Now, she had never said anything like that to me as a student, but thinking back, I start to wonder how often her fear based on appearance was a part of her thinking or her behavior or her preparation of her lesson plans and the curriculum. I wonder if other students received comments like that, and I wonder how it affected them. And I wonder if the reason that we never read any books other than The Crucible, The Scarlet Letter, Hamlet, I wonder if the reason we never read any books where I felt that I could see myself was because she never really read the room. It's important to mention that this is important work for everyone, not just Black teachers or teachers with Black students, everyone. We're preparing students for a future that is increasingly more diverse and interconnected, and it's up to us to do everything that we can to make sure that our students leave our care with respect for themselves and an appreciation and respect for others, regardless of what differences exist. Now, I started with a poem mentioning Black historical heroes like John Johnson and Black superheroes like John Stewart. Look them up. And I think it's equally crucial that the literacy we teach explores both. I've had parents come to me upset that their child was reading a comic book in their free time. Let them! And when it comes to marginalized communities, let those students see themselves as heroes, fictional and historical. Let them see that they can do amazing things. I hope that you do. I believe that you will. Okay, go ahead, have an incredible school year, practice everything that we've talked about here, and I'm going to go do the same. Peace.